Snowy peaks and open skies, northern winds whisper goodbyes. Dreams take root where the maples grow, a land of promise where rivers flow. Welcome to the north, where the light shines so bright, chasing every dream beneath the stars tonight. Every step you take, a journey to belong, building futures here where hearts grow strong. Lakes like mirrors, reflecting pride, from the Rockies to the ocean tide. Voices mingle in a tapestry, a world united in harmony.
All right, guys, surprise, surprise. I've got Igor with me here instead of Alicia. Alicia's off enjoying some much needed break with her family. How you doing, Igor? Oh, 1 second here. I don't have audio for Igor. Let's see here. I think your mic maybe is not working. We'll get it sorted out here.
But now, can you hear
Oh,
me?
yeah, now I can hear you.
All right. Okay, cool.
We'll roll off of that. All right. So welcome, everyone. It's interesting time right now in Canada. We have our election, and it is a very tight race. I look at one poll. After stunning comeback, center-left Liberals likely to win. And then in another one, it says Liberal lead shrinking. And it's just, yeah. And then other polls show the Conservatives ahead. So what we learned from that is that the polls are freaking useless. And we'll see what happens on election day. One thing we do know is that with this election coming out, that there are a record, I think, 7.3 million people that voted in the early voting polls. And so, yeah, it's like 25% bigger jump than in the last election during the pandemic. So we are grateful for all of you joining us, and I'm thankful for Igor and Alicia who covered last week in our live Q&A. And we're back at it again, trying to share a little bit of insight and help. There are an ongoing stream of podcast episodes that we're releasing. So we strongly encourage you to slide over to our Canadian Immigration Podcast. You can find it on Spotify or iTunes, or probably wherever you find your podcasts. And just follow along, because especially our Time's Up series and our new Express Entry Getting It Right series, those two are specifically designed to help you guys make decisions when you've got tough choices to, before you. They're designed to give you at least information so that you can make better decisions. Wow, Igor, we've been pretty busy with our consultations the last stretch, haven't we?
Yeah. And many people are wondering, what do they have to do, especially in light of this immigration that flipped upside down. Because until recently, we would always recommend looking at the provincial nominee programs. And now that even is not an option. And for many people, federal immigration programs are not available, and then provincial nominee programs are not available. And so we have to come up with some creative solutions to allow people to remain longer in Canada, or perhaps pivot and do something else. And there are some solutions, but for many, we don't have any. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a very, very difficult time. And the Liberals' plan has been extremely successful, it appears, in terms of blocking off avenues for people to be able to extend. Fortunately, you have good people like Chaitanya here, who we just filed his citizenship application here just recently, last week, and super excited for him. He's a very entrepreneurial soul, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do in our fine country. He's got lots of big things planned. And so, yeah, we just finished his citizenship application, and Chaitanya, through the pandemic, we got his permanent residence application submitted. So I'm excited to call you a Canadian too as well, Chaitanya. So we'll give you some Oh, a little bit delayed here. We'll give you some applause here. It was a little delayed applause. Here we go. There we go. So thanks for connecting in, my friend, and keep me posted. All right. Well, as far as Express Entry, we really don't know what's going on other than they still appear to have a love affair with French. Let's pull Igor in here into our stream. There we go. So we can see here, and I'll just adjust this so it appears a little bit better in our window. So as you can see here, and I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit here so we get a little bigger view. All right. So as you can see here, April the 14th was the last one they did. It was a PNP, and it's really in a significant holding pattern. I guess we'll have to see, Igor, what happens if they're just waiting for the elections to pass until they do anything really meaningful. We know that the PNPs are that and the French language proficiency are still everything to the Liberal government, and so we'll have to see. It's been all the way back to February the 5th when we last did a CEC. So all these people, it's almost like they're just delaying it just to cause people to fall out of status and their work permits to expire. And unless they are in a provincial nominee program right now, at least over the last couple months, we're closing in almost on 3 months, nothing. So it's like, well, we'll just wait people out and force them into, their work permits expiring, so they have to go home. And I'll be honest, Igor, I've tried to be as patient as I can with our government and the tough decisions they have to make. But I'm just really not terribly happy with how they've treated all these people that have come here. No doubt they made some poor decisions when they opened the doors, and they just really took in more international students than we could handle. I don't know what the long-term master plan was, other than tremendous lobbying that was happening from the post-secondary institutions, and ultimately that resulted in all these people being here who are genuine, honest, sincere people who saved so much money to be able to come to school and then to have a pathway that was laid out for them for permanent residence. And now it just appears that the government says, well, thanks for coming. We never told you that there would be a PR program, which is actually not true. So Minister Mendicino and Minister Fraser were heralding the value of international students and how they were the best candidates. So we'll ultimately have to see how this long-term situation plays out, but it's very disappointing, and my heart breaks for all the people that are in this situation. And as a firm, we do everything in our power to try to help them. And yes, there are times, Igor, more often than I'd like, where we have to have some difficult discussions with people. But there are times where there are options for people. And in our consultations, we canvass everything. But the most important thing is that people are getting information that they can actually rely on. We're not trying to give them false hope. We're not trying to also tell them there is no hope when there might be. And that's why the consultations are so important, because it gives us a chance to canvass everything. All right. What are your thoughts, Igor?
Just wanted to add, yesterday I had a consult that I keep thinking about. It was a guy, and he's 23 years old right now. He studies in States. He doesn't have a single year of skilled foreign work experience, not a single year of Canadian work experience. He has not yet completed his bachelor's degree. And so it looks like it's hopeless for him, right? But surprisingly, he is an ideal candidate that has every opportunity to immigrate here, because he's young. He completes his bachelor's next year, and then all he needs is 1 year of foreign work experience, and then he will have 502 points. And guess how? He speaks perfect English and he knows French. And we've been talking about French for years now. I think the first time we actually started talking about French was somewhere the end of 2021. And we were telling people to invest money into studying French, not into coming to Canada and study here, but into studying French. And so sometimes we have to give advice that would be evergreen for at least a couple of years, And we here we try to speculate what will work in the next couple of years. But sometimes when there's no opportunities right now, some opportunities may arise later. And so for those who are just tuning in and who are new to the channel, You may not find a specific answer. You have to do this and this and that, but you will get a feel, you will get an understanding of where things are going. And this is the main point of this live Q&A. It seems like, oh, they're just answering specific questions that they like. No, we don't. we don't cherry pick questions. Obviously, we try to filter the questions that are more generic, but all we try to do here is help and provide you some guidance, like how to think strategically about what's coming.
Yeah, that's so critical. And there's so much, Igor. So right now in Lethbridge, we're running, we've got a wonderful group of people from my church who decided we need to do something, for the local folks here. And there's a lot of people that really struggle with their English, even that have come. And so we decided to start an English class. And as most of you are aware, wherever you want to take English classes across the country, you pay. Well, we decided to see if we could get some support from our local church congregation. And so we've got volunteer teachers who, the Lethbridge College are shutting their English program down because they didn't get the funding that they thought. So not only is that one of the main sources that's now gone, some of the teachers that work there actually have come over to work with us and to volunteer their time. So we do an English class each evening. And I ran into, an immigration consultant who was at the location where we host the classes at the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association. And, he didn't know who I was originally when we first started talking. And he had his business cards there and they're all lined up there. I guess I better get my business cards over there. But anyways, we told him about the English class and he said, yeah, he's just kind of linked and associated with the college to some extent. I don't know what, like I'm an alumnus from the college. I coach volleyball there. I went to school there, but not a big fan anyways. But long story short, he was shocked that we were doing it for free. And Igor, like this is one thing I will hold out to the immigration lawyers across the country. We volunteer unbelievable amounts of time pro bono. And these English classes that we're offering are completely free for people. We have currently kind of a level 1 and a level 2 class, as we're working with people who are kind of in that category where they just are like, they're just new to Canada. And I absolutely love it. And so we are going to continue forward and try to expand it and do everything we can to help as many people as possible. But that's what we do, right, Igor? Even this here that we're doing right now, this is just a mechanism for us to share and to help. We don't do free consultations. When people book consults for us, they pay for those consults and they get value from them. You can just go to our website and look at the reviews. I was just looking at a few other reviews on our site that we had. I think we're about 214 reviews now. But every single one of these reviews that comes in, it gets responded to by me. And every single comment gets a response either by myself or Igor. And we have tremendous appreciation for the blessings that we have to be able to practice in this area, to feel like we make a difference in the lives of people. But it's not always that case, Igor, for other people out there. And there are a lot of people who are just feeding off of all of these, the desperation of people in the country who are recommending options that have a very, very low chance of success, if not zero, that are putting people in positions that close off all future options for them in the future. And, whether it's filing an H&C application when really there's no substance or foundation for it, or even worse, filing a refugee claim when the person has no real basis for it, just to get a few extra months of open work permit time in Canada that basically closes off all options for PR. And then they end up spending all of their life savings, the last amounts, and then they end up having to go home destitute. And so this is the things that we're battling right now. And I know I didn't mean for this to kind of be a monologue at the start of our live Q&A, but it just breaks my heart. And, and I've thought a lot about it, Igor, and it's so easy to say, well, you're a temporary person, you're here on a work permit. There's no guarantee of permanent residence. And so you should never have expected to get PR. You should always have expected to go home. And there's a lot of people that are saying that. And, and there's a period of time where I was thinking, well, there is some truth to that. You are temporary. But at the same time, these are real human beings who have real hopes and dreams and aspirations. You think of how lucky you were, Igor, to be able to be here, how just, how things just lined up just perfectly for you to be able to be here. Otherwise, where would you be right now? And how many people in Canada have sacrificed everything in their family to come to school, to get work permits after, with the hope of getting permanent residence, so that then they have a future. And now for many, many, many of them, those futures are slipping away.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like, what makes me stand out a little bit is that I am an immigrant myself, and I've been in your shoes. I mean, your shoes, the viewer's shoes. I've been watching Mark's videos since, if I'm not mistaken, Mark, that was like 2017 when I first opened your YouTube channel and found your videos. And I did not understand, like, why this guy is doing those consults for free. There is a catch. There is a catch. And then I became Mark's client, and now I'm doing immigration law myself, and I'm helping others who, just like me, are out of status in the States, or are worrying about whether they can stay in Canada, or just have aspirations. And yeah, like, we truly care. Like, just go and read our reviews on Google, and you will understand that it's not just words. It's not the motto that we put on our website, fulfill your dream of immigrating to Canada. That's actually what we truly care about. That's what we live by, and it's always great to connect to people, especially it's great when we can offer them something.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I hear you. Okay, let's dive into a few things. There really isn't much to talk about. There's people are always posting different comments. Spider-Man here, he says, "Hi, Mark and Igor. Spidey saying hi from the riding of Mark Miller. What do you guys think about a fourth Liberal term that seems inevitable at this point?" Well, I'm not buying it. We will see on election. Maybe the Liberals will get reelected. If that happens, I'll be pretty disappointed, to tell you the truth. I would love nothing more than to have change in our country. And ultimately, it's interesting how polls, like I think in the US, for the US election, the polls were all heavily weighted towards the Democrats. And then when people actually came out and voted, it was a different result. We'll see what happens. The reality is, the beautiful part of this country is that people have the freedom to choose who they want to represent them. And it's a precious, precious gift. Without undue influence or corruption or things like this, it's literally people have the freedom to be able to cast their vote and who they feel will be in the best position to take the country forward into the next, term. And the reality is, if the majority of people want the Liberals to stay in power, then, this is what we do in Canada. Then we support and we say, okay, this is our government. We will go forward and we will do our part. And for me, like I said, I'll be extremely disappointed if the Liberals get elected again. I've already voted Conservative myself, but the reality is, if the Conservatives do not get in, then I will accept that 100% is the will of the people in Canada, and I will do my part to be a good citizen until the next election and cast my free vote again. And I hope that that's the way people see it. Right now, the biggest issue is that there is this huge division, and it's like, if you're not with us, you're against us. If you're not a part of our particular group, whether it's a political party, a social identity, whatever it might be, then you're the enemy. And this division, I just would love for it to end, where we could respect one another for their views and beliefs, but still see them as fellow Canadian citizens, at least within the ranks of those that are voting, and, fellow citizens, and that, everything that's happening, whether it's Trump and all this stuff, that we truly are united as Canadians and that we're not divided. And that's one of the issues that I had with the Liberal government, was this constant need to divide. And I believe in Poilievre's plan for getting us out of the financial problems that we're in, not Carney's spend more money. But at the end of the day, the beautiful part of an election is that it's free and you have the ability to exercise your vote, and every single one vote counts. So that's my views, and I don't hide them in any way. But yeah, there we have it. So thanks,
It was an
Spider-Man.
interesting experience, Mark, voting for the first time as a Canadian citizen. I didn't know how the ballot looks like, how it all works, and then when people saw me at the polling station, I'm like, "Oh, this is so exciting! It's my first time voting," and they're like, "Oh, welcome," you know. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a very interesting experience. Like I was just an immigrant like 5 years ago,
Yeah.
out of status in the U.S., you know, and then all of a sudden I have to vote. And it's also interesting experience because we do immigration law, and there are people talking about how conservatives will reduce immigration significantly, make it comparable to the era of Harper. And then liberals are pro-immigration, and on one hand, like we should tend to vote more liberal to get more
Mm-hmm.
clients. On the other hand,
Yeah.
we are voting for conservatives. At least myself, I also voted conservative, but I think there should be some order. And the biggest problem I see in how immigration works right now is that the whole system was swinging from very left to very right, you know, and then it like the equilibrium is now lost. There is no equilibrium. You know, we invite too many people, then we get rid of too many people at the same time, like a year later, you know, and it's just like there should be some more predictability. It should be a little more fair, straightforward, and people should understand like what's coming in the next 2 years. And this is definitely something that we don't have at this moment.
Yeah. It's a hard situation to go through. And like I was telling, like, yeah, I talk with a lot of friends, and it's very emotionally taxing practicing immigration law right now, because as immigration lawyers, people often come to us when they have no other alternatives. I wish they would come at the beginning, set a good plan in place, and follow through. But often people call as a desperation in their last, hopes. And trust me, that's what I've done for 20 years. So I love when people call. I love when they at least try to see if there are any other options, or at least get confirmation that, yeah, it's time, you're going to have to go home. And one of the things I find myself doing a lot right now, Igor, is just reassuring people that things will be okay. And when people come and they study and they work in Canada and get Canadian work experience, it does give them a step up when they return back home. And if you comply with the temporary conditions of your stay in Canada when you're choosing whether or not to stay or go home, but if you comply and you go home, you leave the option open of being able to come back when things change. You leave the option of being able to go to New Zealand or Australia or the US or UK. You don't have a black mark on your record. And so I find too often some representatives out there are too quick to push people to file something because technically they can, but then once it's refused, it really limits their future. And so that's part of the approach that we take, is giving people the information they need to make good decisions, and not being told what they want to hear necessarily, but what they need to hear and understand. And so I find myself almost, to some extent, there's an element of counseling that goes on. And for a number of years, I served as a bishop in my congregation, and I spent, even when we were fairly young, I was in my early 30s, and I'd counsel all kinds of people on all kinds of issues, everything from marriage problems to children to faith, crises and things like that. And I find a lot of that actually is almost what I'm doing in my consultations now, and just trying to reassure people that things will be okay. And yeah. And then of course, where there are options, then we push as hard as we possibly can.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's flip back here and let's get into some substantive questions. If you are new to this and you're just tuning in, please let us know where you're tuning in, and we'll pull you up and give you a shout out. I love to see how far these little episodes reach, but I also want you to post your questions, and then we will try to pull out as many of the ones as we can that will benefit, like Igor said earlier, the most people possible. And if it's really specific, then we really we'll ring this little bell right here. And that's your instructions that you really should book a consult so that we can dive deeper, because we can't give individual legal advice. It would be dangerous for us to do that, not knowing your whole situation. Often people say, well, I have this situation. Can I travel? Is it okay to travel? Well, we're never going to answer that question, because we need to understand exactly what's happening in your life. And we're not going to give you advice to take some action without knowing the whole story. That's why the consultations are so important. Okay, and I also want to point out just here at the beginning, for those of you that are fortunate to get through with Express Entry, remember that the Express Entry Accelerator course is, and I have a masterclass this evening even at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. This is the sponsor of all that we do here. And so if you have, you're looking for assistance with Express Entry, obviously you can retain us, but if funds are tight, the Express Entry Accelerator is an awesome tool to help you make your way through. And I'll also point out that within our Canadian Immigration Institute, Igor also created an amazing little course on temporary resident visas, TRVs. So definitely go in and check that out. And the citizenship, this has been sitting here, Igor, this coming soon.
May. It's coming this May.
Coming in May. There we go. Coming in May. So we'll get that one out as well. But all of these resources and tools are designed to help you all. And I have a massive plan for rolling out courses for just about every kind of immigration application I can think of. Why? Because right now, I'm just finding that I do not have one-to-one time enough to help every single person that needs assistance. And so if I can, I get a lot of calls from people all over now who know someone, a friend, they want to try to help them, whether it's a business that's trying to keep a worker, a family that knows of someone they want to try to help, a church congregation that has members that are struggling right now and are looking for a way to help them. And so what I realized, of course, that we really need to build out all the courses for those purposes. Ukrainians that are here looking to find pathways, we're looking to build out courses for that. So I let that kind of set aside a little bit because we were just so busy trying to make the firm what it is today. But now, as far as the DIY world and the Canadian Immigration Institute, there's going to be a huge push that I'm going to go forward, releasing all of these courses that are designed to help people, so that if you do have someone that's a Canadian that's looking for a way to help, they can subscribe to the course and then use that as a guide to help them when their friend is applying for some form of immigration application. So stay tuned and go check those two courses out. All right, let's dive into some questions. Okay. Trevor says, love to hear how recent trade war stuff is going to impact financial requirements for entry. I don't think it's going to have any impact in terms of settlement funds. Those are kind of set by, GDP and the average kind of per capita income that they expect. And they have kind of a threshold for almost, it's kind of like the low, I wouldn't call it the poverty line, but basically it's a fairly low threshold. But for permanent residents, those just go up incrementally each year a little bit. When it comes to study permits, we've seen major jumps in that, just because they want people who are coming who can focus exclusively on studies and not need to have to work. That's why they've basically reduced and made it a lot more difficult for everything from spousal open work permits to just entrance requirements to securing study permits. That's why they've increased those fees. So don't see a major change with that. AK says, good morning. Any update on the EOPER timeline? Submitted the picture and address on portal 2 months ago, but haven't received the EOPER yet. Igor, that sure sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, it is a pretty common situation. I'll tell you about my recent experience with one of my family members. My sister-in-law got her Canadian permanent residency approved through the Ukrainian family reunification policy. She got the request for information to create an EOPER, like the permanent residence portal. I think she got it about a month and a half ago. And then 23 days later, when she submitted this information, provided her photo and provided her address and certified that she's in Canada, she got an EOPER. So it took 23 days. So yeah, it may take longer, it may take faster for some candidates, and it's impossible to predict how long it will take. Just make sure you open your PR portal, scroll to the very bottom. Perhaps there was an email, it got to your spam folder. If that's not the case, then you just have to sit and wait. And there are many people who are waiting for EOPERs. Just make sure that you maintain your legal status in Canada all the way through. We had a client who was a Russian citizen, and his status was coming to an end, and he still did not have his EOPER, so he had to file for an extension of his work permit to maintain his status. And then sometime like mid-process, he got his EOPER, so he withdrew his extension application. So that's very important as well.
Exactly. All right. I'll give a shout out to some other platforms. So Diane Campos is over on Facebook saying hello to you too, Diane. Diane's an immigration consultant who has actually took the Express Entry course. And I just love when consultants connect in and they try to increase their knowledge and understanding. And yeah, it was a pleasure having you as a student, Diane. I wish you all the best. And then we've got a comment over here on X, which is cool. So Exhausted, yeah, I know how that feels. Exhausted says, what is the average time frame to process eligibility review for federal skilled workers under the French stream? So, so Igor, if we look at under the French stream, I'm assuming category-based draw, express entry. And one thing we know, if we look at IRCC and we just go to the processing times, I don't pay you guys any attention to the tracker or how fast things are moving across. I just don't. The only thing I look at is I go here to the processing times. I pull up, in this case, federal skilled worker, and 6 months is what it has, which is kind of what their service level standards are for, for the express entry process. So I don't pay. Yeah, please, Igor.
It was just 5 months not long ago, and everything starts to go up in time. Like work permits, 210 days or 201 day. Like seriously, it was like 160 or 140 days like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It
went down and then it's back up again. So hey, we're at 201 as of April the 16th, 201 days. It's just, crazy. We've been doing a lot of family sponsorship lately. I've got a review just after our live stream here with a couple to get their applications filed. And so when you look at in Canada processing here, it was up to 28 months at one point in time, I think. Or
it was 21, and now it's 24.
Yeah, now it's 24. So full 2 years. But I'll let you guys in on something. 2 years was the average processing time for permanent residents pretty much across the board. So the reason it was 2 years is because they weren't ruthless and heartless like they are now. So those of you who are complaining, oh my goodness, 2 years. Well, understand in those days when it was 24 months, if you made a mistake and you forgot to include a document, something that wasn't significant or critical, they would send a request letter. They would send a deficiency letter that says, hey, you forgot to upload your police clearance certificate, or the one you uploaded isn't the right one. Could you please obtain a new one? And that's why it would take this long. Now, right now, part of the reason the processing times are climbing is because the Liberal government has basically, there's layoffs across the board. Like they're reducing the number of immigration officers to process applications, those on temporary contracts. We don't know. They're in the process of I don't know if how many have been laid off at this stage or if that's just discussions. I know there's been negotiations, but when you have uncertainty, then people are like, well, if I'm not going to keep my job, I might as well look for another one. And so there's that element of self-selection when people leave as well, when they know that their jobs are going to come up. They move on to another one early. But anyways, the number of officers to process are finite. And so they shift them around to the areas in which they feel are going to be the most beneficial. If we look at inside versus outside Canada, and then we choose this category here, you can see it's only 11 months. So people are like, well, what's with that? Why are outside Canada? Shouldn't that take longer because they have to do separate vetting and background checks and things like that? Well, the reality is the reason they place emphasis on the outside is because in most cases, people are separated. They're not living together. So the reunification of families under Section 3, I think, of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act is one of the pillars of the act in immigration is the reunification of families. So they place greater emphasis on getting spouses together. And theoretically, if you're inside Canada, you're already living with your partner. And so then in that case, they, in some cases, will try to issue open work permits sooner, so that if you're here living with your spouse and you have an open work permit, then you're not really harmed by, at least in their mind, by a lengthy processing time. So just to kind of explain so people understand how it's set up and why it is the way it is. Okay, let's jump to a few others. This one's from Nash, a frequent listener. After receiving AOR, can I still apply for a bridging open work permit even if my postgrad remains valid for a year? Assuming I'm eligible otherwise, that is. What do you think, Igor? If someone has a work permit that's valid as a postgrad work permit, can they then apply for a bridging open work permit with their AOR?
Yeah, nothing prevents you from doing that.
Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Yes, you can. Okay, Machinet Systems says worked in two different.
I was looking at this question. It's either schedules or
schedules, but same employer. My employer consolidated these two work experiences into one. So I reported my e-profile that way instead of two different experiences. Hope that's okay. No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. If you have two different roles with the company, even if it's the same employer, you don't want to just merge them together and say it's one job. Now, even if it's the same knock code, like I always separate it out into two different entries in the work history. And the reality is, because it could be seen as a misrepresentation. And when you are describing your role, sometimes people move up just gradually, like they're a software engineer 1 to an engineer 2, or a team lead 1 to a team lead 2, where you're not jumping outside of the knock code. Even in those circumstances, I break it down and just kind of explain how it works. And you can use it. You can do it all in one employer reference letter. But no, I wouldn't do it that way. Yeah, like Machinet, if you want to book a consult, we can talk about how to deal with that, or how to, if it's what you've done and the way you've described it is the way I think it is, I would definitely be submitting a web form just to clarify it. But you got to be careful with this stuff. And, and never do I ever want to see anyone who's posting a comment after they have got one of these ITAs that are so precious, they didn't subscribe to the course, and then they say, I hope that's okay. Because there's no need to hope ever. There's no need to have any uncertainty within Express Entry. Zero. It is the most concrete, fixed, application process out there. If you do things correct, your application will not get rejected. It's simple as that. But if you have areas where you don't give immigration, IRCC, exactly what they ask for, or you're incomplete or vague or whatever it might be, you provide a black and white copy versus a color copy of a police certificate, those kinds of things get applications returned. And you guys know what it's like. You may never get a second chance. So you have to be so careful, so careful. All right, and I don't mean to freak you out, Machinet Systems here. I don't mean to do that. But this stuff we take so serious. It's a critical part of our practice. We do so much Express Entry. And it just breaks my heart when I have so many resources and tools out there to help people. And they just listen online or Reddit or wherever they're watching that says, you're dumb if you have to hire someone. You can do it yourself. It's so easy. Those people telling you that are freaking idiots, because it is not. And we see it every day. People who make the slightest mistake, in many cases now, they're done. There is no getting another second chance because they can't extend their work permits. They're living in a large center in Canada. Their wage is $33 an hour. And if it is, their employer can't get an LMIA for them. Postgrads are expiring. Their bridging open work permit they applied for is going to get rejected because their Express Entry application was refused. And so, yeah, sorry to get, a little bit animated about this, but it's an issue that brings a lot of concern. You can, like I said, Machinet, you can book a consult if you want, but otherwise I would update that and send a new web form in and correct that. Okay, Grav, I'm going to also ring the bell. Oh, no, I'm going to ring the bell. Not applause. I'm going to ring the bell here because you've got a multiple one here where you say, should I? Whenever someone says, should I send my postgrad? That is, and the follow-up here, each of these, you're on your postgrad, and then the questions here, both of these, really you need to book a consult because it's not something that we can address here without knowing a whole lot more information. So we'll just pass on that one, Gaurav. Okay. Okay. Adil says, peace be unto you. I am from Morocco. I want a job. I am an electrician. Okay, Adil. If you're from Morocco, well, there's a good chance you speak French. And there's a program called the Francophone Mobilité Program. And if you have the equivalent of an NCLC level 5, so that kind of Canadian language benchmark level 5, then all you need is a Canadian employer that says, hey, I want to hire Adil as an electrician. And they register the job offer in the employer portal. And you, my friend, can get a work permit to come and work in Canada. Now, we don't find jobs for people. We're not recruiters. That's not our area of expertise. We are immigration lawyers, and we provide assistance with employers who are filing their portion of the job offer. We provide assistance with workers like you, Adil, who are applying for the work permit. But you, if you speak French, are in a pretty sweet spot. And same thing, if you want to book a consult, we can go over that in detail. But I'll just show you here. We'll pull it up on our mobility program. I'll pull this up in my Google here. This right here is it, Francophone Mobility Work Permit, how to apply. So if you're applying on or after June 15th, you'll see here that the requirements are so easy to meet if you speak French. So general eligibility, so you're not inadmissible to Canada. Live and work in one of the 9 Canadian provinces or 3 territories, so that's where you're planning on going to live and work. You're able to prove that you speak French, and you can see the equivalent to a level 5 or higher in the NCLC scale, and then have a job offer from the employer for a position that can even be tier 4 or 5 unless it's primary agriculture. That's not eligible. So it's quite easy to do, and I strongly encourage you, Adil, to consider that. So not often I can tell people. Yes, Igor, please.
I'll also add, Adil, it's possible that if you speak French and you're young and you can speak English and you are an electrician, electricians are on one of the categories for express entry, and your French will give you a significant boost in points. So it's important that you calculate your CRS score, try to identify if you have enough points, and perhaps create a profile in the express entry system. And if that's something that you qualify for, perhaps you can get permanent residence a little bit easier than other candidates.
Mm-hmm. Good point, Igor. Now the question is, are they ever going to do another trade draw, or are they just going to keep doing French? But hey, maybe even French will be an option for you too. So win-win, Adil. Win-win, our friend. Okay. Let's see here. What do we have next? Okay, we'll pull up Satnam's question here. The expiry date of visa stamp on a passport is to be considered, or the date on the work permit document that we get at the airport should be considered when leaving Canada. When leaving Canada. Okay, do you want to talk about the distinction, Igor, between a visa imprinted in a passport and a work permit document when it comes to leaving and re-entering?
Yeah, so your visa may be issued until the expiry of your passport. Let's say your visa is valid for the next 9 years. It doesn't mean that you can stay in Canada for 9 years. If you are admitted to Canada and the officer does not put any stamp, by default you're admitted for 6 months. If the officer puts a stamp and restricts the time when you that you can spend in Canada and says you have to leave by a certain date, you have to leave by that date. If the officer allows you to enter for more than 6 months, the officer will issue you a visitor record that will have an expiry date. And until that expiry date, you can remain in Canada. If you received a visitor record and you left Canada and then you re-entered back, your visitor record is invalidated and you are readmitted again for 6 months. And so it's always 6 months from the time when you entered, unless there is a visitor record and you didn't leave Canada after you got one.
All right. Thank you, Igor. Let's jump into some more questions. We'll give a shout out to Nicole here, who's in Coaldale. Great, Nicole Gerono. Great to have you. That's just a hop, skip, and a jump down the road from where I'm at. In fact, I actually taught school during my student teaching at both the R.I. Baker School and Kate Andrews High School in Coaldale. So I coach volleyball there. I've got many Just amazing experiences and memories from Coldell. And it was actually really, really close, Nicole, for me to be probably living in Coldell with my family. In fact, I was considering applying to law school, and actually I had even applied to law school, and I had a job offer come up for the head phys ed job in Coldell at the high school. And in the end, they interviewed myself and one other girl who is already in that school division. I was teaching in a different school division, and they ended up giving her the job. But if they had given me that head phys ed job at Coldell, I wouldn't have gone to law school. So that is Coldell. That's the, you always have these forks in the road, right? And it's interesting to see what the future would have held if I had stayed a teacher. And when I didn't get that job, I decided to then pursue law, and that's what's got us here today. So it's amazing. We all have those things in our lives. So thanks, Nicole. Okay. Anubis says, can we gain work experience for CEC and federal skilled workers simultaneously working 2 full-time jobs together? So Igor, what do you think about this one? I've got my own views about this, but what do you think about gaining work experience simultaneously? And I'm assuming they're talking 30 hours or more working at 2 jobs at the same time. And for CEC and FSW, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually planning to record a video on this today. I've already scripted the video for on this exact topic, and the short answer, yes, you can. There is nothing that prevents you from doing it. There are some practical difficulties, though. So you can be in Canada and working for a non-Canadian employer who's outside Canada remotely, right? But it really comes down to what exactly are you doing? Let's say you are an electrician. You cannot work remotely as an electrician, right? So the first problem is not every job can fit, right? So if, let's say, you are working as a teledoctor, perhaps that's possible. Or if you work as a customer support for a tech company, there is an OCCO that is skilled work experience, and I actually used some of my work experience when I immigrated as a support technician for a tech company. So some jobs, yes, they can work. The other complexity, the difficulty with it, is that what exactly work experience are you claiming? Foreign work experience you're claiming, or Canadian. Like, are you claiming 2 full-time work experiences in Canada and outside Canada? If yes, then it becomes a little problematic. Well, how do you explain to the officer, how did you manage to work for 60 hours a week? Because remember, each full-time work experience is 30 hours a week. On the other hand, if you work, let's say, part-time in Canada and then full-time, meaning 30 hours remotely, that can work. Or vice versa, if you work full-time in Canada and part-time remotely for a non-Canadian employer, that could work as well. But in any event, you want to explain that to the officer. You want to at least provide a letter of explanation to explain how that was even possible. And Mark, it's interesting because same applies to international students who are in Canada. They cannot work full-time or count their Canadian work experience while they are full-time students, but at the same time, if they work, let's say part-time, remotely for a non-Canadian employer, while they are full-time students, technically nothing prevents them from claiming that foreign work experience.
Nope. And that's a big strategy, Igor. Like when it comes to the CRS score, that's what but you have to do it right. Like you have to structure it properly. But yeah, that is one of the strategies that can be used to accumulate more points. And in some cases, when I look at the category-based draws, there's very few, that you can kind of do remotely. They tend to be more technical, more kind of in-your-face kind of jobs. But if there was, in the world of in the previous, when we had a T still in our STEM, it would be possible for someone to get a job and work for 6 months for a company outside of Canada remotely, count that towards FSW, but it also would count towards the category-based draws. And so it's an interesting situation to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, and Mark, I also wanted to add, here, 2 words, right? It has to be reasonable and genuine. So you
Yeah.
cannot say, oh, I work for someone remotely just because you know a guy who can vouch for you and give you a reference letter saying, yes, you worked. And then perhaps send you money just fictitiously every couple of months, right? Supposedly for your work. I like yesterday in one of my consults, a client asked, like, what if I, let's say, work as a bookkeeper for my father's business in one of the in my home country, and I'm like, okay, you have to put your officer hat, right? And you have to look at us holistically and say, okay, so your father runs the business, so your father can vouch for you and write whatever. Your father is, let's say, somewhere like 9 hours away, right? Like in a totally different time zone. You are young. You don't have bookkeeper's education. You don't have experience as a bookkeeper. And then your father's, for some reason, magical reason, decided to hire you as a bookkeeper for his business. And if the business is like running operations and has large scale operations, would a reasonable person hire their son to work for their business if the son is like in a completely different time zone, doesn't have any experience? Or would it be more reasonable for him to hire someone locally who has experience and education? And theoretically, yes, you can. Yes, you can be a bookkeeper for your father's business, but would it make sense? Would it alert the officer? You have to keep thinking critically about whatever you're claiming in your profile, whatever the strategy you choose. And this is where we come in, right? Like we have this experience. We know how the officers think. We see those refusals where the officer says, you know, I just don't buy that you actually work for this company because this company doesn't even have a website or Google presence. So would this company have a reasonable scale to employ you as whatever title you had in the company? And we've seen refusals like this. So it's important that you don't just like, take benefit of this gap, and whatever you do is reasonable and genuine.
Oh boy. People are just in a horrible situation right now, Igor.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about, when I think about the people that we work with, like we do get a fair number that have made poor decisions in the past, who have chosen to purchase a job offer or maybe misrepresented on their original study permit application. I told Alicia at one point I was going to do a special video on the top 10 things that your immigration consultant told you that were wrong and are ruining your life. But, sometimes lawyers make mistakes too. But it's a reality. Like people who are only focused on money, and trust me, you guys, I have got 2 sons that are getting married in August. Do I want you to book consults and retain our firm and earn money for my family? Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do. This is my job. But notwithstanding that, we feel it's really like a calling, right, Igor, as a lawyer. And we feel we have a duty to provide pro bono assistance, where we can. And we do a lot of pro bono work within the firm. That's where we don't get paid. Then we do a lot of what we call low bono work, where I look at a client. I'm just working with a mother and her daughter right now. And the other representatives, in this case, they were consultants, were wanting to charge them like $3,000 each for their work permit extensions. Just total exploitation. And it's not that charging $3,000 is not a fair fee for work permit if that's, what someone agrees to. But they had no money. And, the last of their savings would be eaten up. And so I, told them I would do it for, $1,000. And we call that low bono, where normally we might charge, $3. You can go on our website, you can see what we charge. There's no secrets about it, because there's a lot of work that goes into these things, and we do not use assistants or paralegals or consultants. Igor and I work directly with our clients, and we do that on purpose because there's no room for margin of error. Like there's no margin of error. There's no room for error at all. And so we have to make sure we do it right. But I look at this, this couple, and it happens a lot now, where people maybe they don't have a job anymore, and the money, I don't know where it comes from for people, but there are representatives out there that just feed off of it, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna roll in the bucks, I'm gonna charge, because they know people are desperate and feel like they don't have anywhere else to turn. And so we do pro bono, we do low bono, and we do our regular rates, which are often what we charge. So don't get me wrong, we charge what we do for a reason. But it's I just feel like I have a duty. I have a duty to to the courts, is what we agree to when we do our kind of our oath when we become a lawyer. At least in Alberta we do. And we have a duty to the profession, to uphold the highest standards of ethical conduct and to conduct ourselves in a way that brings positive repute to the profession. And yes, sometimes lawyers fall short. If you saw the emails that Igor and I get quite frequently of people being disbarred or suspended, one we saw was an articling student even that got himself into trouble and got suspended for a year and a half before he even became a full lawyer. And you wonder, is that person ever going to have a chance to even have a second go at it? But yeah, that's what the law societies do. So, what do you got there,
This
Igor?
is the book full of those decisions when lawyers get disbarred.
Oh, there's an actual book on it. Wow.
Yeah.
Lawyers' ethical and professional regulation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So Igor had to go through his, all of his ethics classes and everything to get called as a lawyer last year. So at least here in Canada. So anyways, yeah, I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, we just, I don't know, like go read the reviews that people leave for the firm. We don't try to be anything more than we are. We're constantly trying to learn. Sometimes people will come to us and I'll say, wow, I never heard of that. And that's actually a good idea. Let's go take a look and see if it's something that might actually work, right? We're not the purveyors of every single ounce of perfect knowledge on immigration. There are really, really wonderful immigration representatives out there that are super smart and know what they're doing. But one thing I always hold out is that there's not a single person out there that cares more than we do about the work we do or the people we represent. There may be lots out there that care as much, but no one cares more. And that's part of the reason our firm hasn't grown very big. We've stayed kind of small because there's a certain mindset we have when we practice, and it requires a lot of personal sacrifice to do it this way. But when I go to bed at night, aside from my heart aching for people who are just struggling, I can sleep with a clear conscience, knowing that I haven't tried to exploit or take advantage of someone. I've genuinely tried to help. I've made personal sacrifices for me and my family to try to help people. And when all, is said and done, when we live our lives and when the day comes for us to meet our makers, I want to be able to look with my head up and be able to look my God in my eyes and know, like straight in the eyes, and know that I don't have guile, that I did things, honestly and upright. I didn't exploit or take advantage. And I'll be honest, Igor, I see a lot of that all around me. People exploiting their own countrymen, people that are trying to get a result by cheating or lying. And it's not a solution for a happy life. But anyways, wow, I keep getting on these monologue runs here. Sorry, everyone. Okay, let's see. We've got and we have a ton of really good questions here. So let's see what we can do. Let's see here. Okay, we'll just zip through these really fast. We'll try to keep these answers a little bit shorter. Mark and Igor submitted my profile, 492, qualified for both trades and CEC. Hold a I think CAQ maybe as well. I know CEC is a long shot right now. Do you think I'd clear in trades whenever it may be? Profile cook. Yeah, like here's the thing. Because cooks are in that list, so many people are using cook as a trade, and it inevitably is going to drive up the CRS scores when you have that one position, because it's relatively easy to kind of get into. And so is 492 enough? Maybe if it's a trade draw. CEC, no, it won't. It's not going to be enough. But it just depends. That's kind of my thoughts on
The
that.
highest CRS score for the trade draw was on June 4, 2024 with 436 points. And the last draw we had was in October. So approximately every 6 to 7 months, they do a draw. Like now, the draw should be coming for trades in the
Yeah.
next couple of months. At least that's my prediction. And if you
I
have 492, good.
yeah. And I can't remember, Igor, if the trades back then, the way they defined trades, included cooks. Were
No, they
cooks and
didn't.
chefs in it? So I think that's part of the reason why the trade scores back then were lower, is because cooks were not a part of it. And once they added cooks, and oh my goodness, Igor, like insurance adjusters or whatever, anyways, I don't know. I don't know. I guess Minister Miller had some friends in that occupation. I don't know. I have no idea why they would be on there. Okay, Victor says, what's your outlook for the draws after the elections? Do you anticipate larger draws, smaller draws, or a continuation? Could you share different possible scenarios? Okay, well, let's start with if all the polls are correct and the Liberals get reelected. I'm assuming if they get reelected, will they continue as they are? I think they will. At least it would be massively hypocritical and just so two-faced to say we love immigrants and now we love immigrants again. And so I don't anticipate that they would do that. I anticipate they would probably stay the course. If the Conservatives get in, remember, immigration is comprised of economic, family class, refugees and humanitarian applications. And you think of all these special measure programs that have also been put in place. So traditionally, the Conservatives have always been much more pro-economics. So for all of you out there probably listening to this, I don't see or envision a major drop on the economic immigration side, but I do see that some of those other programs may be curtailed a little bit. At least in my mind, I think that's probably. So when they say we're going to tie immigration to housing starts, Pierre Poilievre has mentioned that maybe. I'm not as concerned about that because they've got a plan in place to build more houses. And I look at Alberta, which is leading the way of provinces and getting things done and building and construction. I think I don't know if there's anywhere else in the country where they're doing a faster job of building homes than in Alberta under our Conservative government. And so if the Conservatives got in, I anticipate that if the numbers do drop, it's not going to be instant. They're going to take time to figure out everything and understand what's going on. And then they're going to put in place a plan to build more homes. And because everybody knows that we need immigrants, we do. It's just, it has to be in a measured way, in a way that everyone benefits collectively. And what's happened now is that everybody is suffering because of the numbers that have come in, and it's just hard. And when you have an imbalance in the infrastructure to support compared with the numbers that are relying on that structure, when we're in a socialist country, which we really are, it's our tax dollars that pay for those different systems. So so without getting into too much, I think if the Conservatives are elected, then that's going to be a factor. But remember, it's possible that either of those parties win a minority, right? So they don't have a majority like the Liberals have right now, a minority, but they are paired, linked up with the NDP so that they control what's happening in the government. We could have a minority government that's toppled very shortly if one or more of the other parties doesn't align with them to give them a majority and in Parliament. So that's another factor people have to look at. But yeah, I don't. It's just hard because there's so many different views on all of this, and there's different agendas, and things can be manipulated. They sure can on all sides. So yeah. Anyways, okay. Moving on here, Eliandra says, what are the requirements for language proficiency category? I'm level B1 and haven't applied for the test because I understood that the minimum is B2. My score is 495, but that's low for experience category. Eliandra, if you're going through Express Entry, the Federal Skilled Worker Program, if that's the one you're going through, the minimum is a 7. We go by Canadian Language Benchmark or the NCLC. So that's kind of the language that we speak in when we talk about immigration. And if you're a Canadian Experience class, then it can be as low as 5 if you are being drawn under Tier 3 across the board. And got someone dropping off something at the door here. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add, Igor, if I'm missing anything from Alejandra here from her comment.
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to send you the link in Teams.
Oh, just for the equivalency tables? Sure.
Yeah, like it's very broad categorization, like B1, B2. But this is approximately what those categories mean. So B1, B2 wouldn't be enough right now.
Yeah.
It meets the minimum requirements, but that wouldn't be enough to get an invitation to apply. So you would want to have at least 877. That's like the golden minimum that you need right now in English.
Super. Thanks, Igor. Okay. Claude says selected last February for FSW, but couldn't get all the docs on time. Oh, so sorry, Claude. The reference letter. Yeah. And this is a tip. Okay. This is something I teach in my course all the time. Any documentation that isn't going to expire, go get it early. And what I mean by that is if you have past work experience for an employer you no longer work for, there's nothing stopping you from getting the reference letters now. They're not going to really expire. Now, I don't like to have letters that are like 4 or 5 years old, but the reality is if it's work experience that's older and you're no longer working there, then get it in advance. Same thing for police clearance certificates. People say, well, don't do that. Don't get them too soon. Well, if you don't plan on going back to that country, then they don't expire as long as you got them after you left. That's just one example of some of the things that we teach in the course. Okay. We got another local here. Money Sniper 35. Watching from Lethbridge. That's where I'm at, you guys. It's been 2 months since I submitted my PNP Tech Pathway application. How much longer do I still have to wait? A very long time, Money Sniper. So the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program and all the PNPs are basically being held ransom by the federal government, our Liberal government, because they didn't take as many refugees as they were supposed to. That's what Minister Miller said, so I have to assume he's telling the truth. And they slashed it all in half, which then completely disrupted their plans for 2025. Many had a surplus already built up in 2024 that they expected to then run through 2025. Well, when the numbers dropped significantly, then they had to drastically reduce the intake of new applications in 2025 and just process the ones from 2024 and the select nominations in the highest categories. And I'll be honest, tech is not a priority like it used to be. So what I usually tell people is be so grateful that you're in. And I'm assuming it was your actual nomination application that you submitted because you said that it's been submitted 2 months ago and not just an expression of interest. If it's an expression of interest, then there's no guarantee at all that you'll even receive an invitation to submit an application for nomination. So,
and Mark, like
30-some thousand people. Yeah. Sorry, Igor.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What I meant to say is that once you get an expression of interest, then you have to wait months. Once you get a nomination, then you have to submit an application through the non-express entry stream. And then right now it's about 20 months to process the PNP application, and you don't get an acknowledgement of receipt right away. And if you do get the acknowledgement of receipt, you then have to apply for the work permit. And throughout all of this time, you have to maintain your valid immigration status. So realistically, the process can take like somewhere like 30 months. So how do people get their nominations and permanent residence without losing their status? That's a very good question.
Very difficult. And I did an interview with Nicholas Kyung with the Toronto Star a couple weeks ago now. And we talked about this exact issue. Why are the PNPs non-express entry being treated differently than express entry? And we spent a good hour talking with Nicholas, just educating him on kind of how it all works and the history of everything. And yeah, this is a deliberate choice. It's choice by government as to how they're doing this. Because even you guys, there was even a time when you could file like the acknowledgements of receipt for the non-express entry PR, they would come back fairly quickly. Other permanent resident programs like the spousal sponsorship one, we used to actually be able to file work permits concurrently at the same time with the spousal sponsorships to allow spouses to maintain status if they were already working until a decision was made. And then they'd often get their work permits issued quickly. But then the Liberal government decided to pull that and now force spouses to have to wait until an acknowledgement of receipt. And then, Igor, they're processing with exactness this perfection model. We call it a one-touch policy, where even if you miss, we saw some applications where people had reported a postal code missing from additional family information form that got the whole thing returned. And when that happens, then the person falls out of status, especially if they were trying to apply for a work permit, or it's delayed their receipt of the acknowledgement of receipt in order to apply for a work permit extension. And it's just creating a miserable situation here. But, well, it is what it is. Okay, Andrew, did LMIA point removal have much impact? The pool seems pretty inflated even now. Yeah, we just have to see, Andrew, because we hope that, with those points being removed, that it's going to have a measurable or at least a noticeable difference on the CEC draws. Igor, what is can you pull it up really quick? And I guess I could do it here too, but what was the highest the last CEC draw? What was it for? I'm sorry, it was 520, was it? Or I don't think we crossed into the tens, was it? Igor's just going to pull up.
521.
521. Okay, yeah. So that was in the world of 50 points for a job offer. So we just don't know how many of those people in that range had the job offer that was pushing them up into that range. So yeah, we'll just have to see. Let's see. Alvin says, hi, can you assist application for postgrad? Yeah, absolutely. There's very, very few things, you guys, that we can't do as a firm. I'll just flip back here. It all starts always with speak to a lawyer here. So when you click on here, you can go right to our site and you can choose. Alicia's blocked off this week because she is off on a little break with her family. If you look at me here and we pull it up, you can see I'm pretty full. I'm booked right up. That's rare because I have so many days open, you guys, but I've got lots of space on Friday. Yeah, Friday. So Igor is the same way. So both he and I have space, and we always make sure that our calendars are open right now as much as possible, just because, well, the reality is we know how many people are, just desperate for solutions. So here's Igor. So you can actually get into Igor faster. Oh, Igor's got tons of space tomorrow. So that's fantastic. So go check that out. And it's interesting. One thing I've learned with all of you fine folks is you tend to book like the very next day. So I can tell my wife, oh, looks like my calendar's pretty open on Friday, for instance. So yeah, we could probably go do that. And then I'll forget to block it off. And then I'll come back. It's kind of like over Easter. So I didn't block off Easter Friday or Monday. I just worked through both of them. But on Friday, it'll be Thursday night, and I'll take a quick look, and I'll be like, oh, it's pretty open. So yeah, we should be able to go do that thing. And then I'll get up in the morning having forgotten to block my calendar off, and I'll have a full calendar. So you guys are very impulsive folks. And well, that's why we have our consults set up the way they are, so that we can be available to help you in the moment when you most need us. All right. So if you need something urgent, book a consult with Igor. And another thing I'll point out too is that Alicia, myself, and Igor, we share everything. We talk about everything. Every difficult scenario, every challenging situation we're trying to deal with, we bounce it off of each other. Okay. MNR88 Canadian says, hi, I have applied for H&C and I've been waiting for the stage 1 for 1.5 years and no response. What do you guys think about that? It's only going to get worse. So not surprising. That does not shock me in any way. Why? Because the levels plans call for what, like 15,000 or something this year? I can't even remember H&C applications.
20,000 people for the next 3 years when we have about 80,000 applications by now. At least.
Yeah. And I think, Igor, if we look at the annual levels plans, even for this year, let's see if we can pull them up. Supplementary information. I think this is my winner. So if we go here and we look, it actually is scheduled to drop. So you can see here, we have for this year, if we go down to H&Cs, you can see 10,000 actually is what they have set for this year. Can you imagine that? So 10,000 spots for 2025 is how many they intend to land this year. Next year, they say 6,900, And after that, 4,300. And understand that this is not just H&C, but it also includes like permit holder class and other responses to situations in Ukraine, Sudan, and Hong Kong. So you can see the number of spots that they've actually allocated is so low. So when you have low allocation, you have massively high, and you said, Igor, what, between 70 and 80,000 applications already in the queue?
We had 60,000 by last October.
60,000 last October, and it's only going to get more. So realistically, you're looking. I wouldn't be surprised if these numbers are like they are for the old entrepreneur self-employed programs, where you're looking at 3, 4 years, 5 years, right? Can you imagine being in Canada as an H&C? You submit an application. If you don't have a valid work permit, like, you are basically illegal for 5 years. How do you support yourself? We don't advise our clients to just work illegally, right? But it's a horrible situation to be in. All right. Let's see who else we have here. So next is Carolina. She's tuning in from Sault Ste. Marie. Welcome, Carolina. Great to have you here. Spacebound says Mark Holthe for next Pope. Probably not going to happen, my friend, but I was a bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I was like a pastor, a minister for a congregation, not quite the level of bishop within the Catholic Church, but at least in terms of structure and hierarchy. But I had a wonderful opportunity to just serve the members of my congregation. And in our church, we take turns. So I was asked to fill that role for a number of years within my ward congregation. We call it a ward. And I married people. I presided over heartbreaking funerals. I was responsible for all aspects of the building, from the facilities to the youth programs to the primary. And the wonderful thing about our church is that everybody gets a job, and we all do it together, and it's all free. It's all volunteer, so we're not paid to do it. So that was kind of fun, starting my law practice back then, having a young family and being the bishop. But it was one of the most joyous, happy times in my life serving. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so we'll see who the next pope is. But yeah, my heart goes out to the Catholic members and that faith who've lost their spiritual leader. And hopefully the next pope that comes in will help to move the needle forward for them and their congregation. All right, next is Betty. She says, hello, Mark and Igor. I'm working with Alicia. Oh, excellent human being. She sure is, Betty. I was in Canada, now back in my country, Mexico, studying French to improve my score. Thanks for your videos and support. There's an applause for you, Betty. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is an interesting one, Igor. Satnam says, just received COPER and I'm currently waiting for my PR card. Is it possible to courier my PR card to India? I've heard from many people that it is illegal. Well, we discourage that. But ultimately, I don't know, Igor, I don't think there's any law, at least in Canada, from couriering a PR card. It could get lost or stolen, but I don't think there's any law preventing it. You just got to be careful. If it says PR card on the outside, well, maybe, it's got a greater chance of being lifted by someone in the mail going to India. I don't know, but yeah.
But that happens. Like people send their PR card. A friend of mine, Polish national who got a permanent residence, she was stuck in Poland and waiting for her PR card to arrive, and it arrived just on time so that her parents, or actually not her parents, the parents of her spouse sent the PR card to her in Poland, and she got it like one day before she had to board the plane to travel back to Canada. So sometimes it's just what you have to do, but never heard of this being illegal, but just be careful.
Yeah. Isaac says, girlfriend lives outside Canada. We want to get married. She got denied US visa in the previous time. I know times, she said a US visa. In previous times, I know I will affect sponsorship. What would be the best path to sponsor her? She's never applied for anything with Canada Immigration. No, Isaac. If you're sponsoring her as a spouse, a denied US visa, I'm assuming it was a temporary visa, like a B visa. If it was like a visitor visa or work or study or things like that, a prior refusal for another country doesn't negatively impact the ability to sponsor them as a permanent resident to come to Canada. It can have an impact when someone's applying for a temporary document. So if the US says, nah, we don't think you'll go home if you issued this visitor visa, you then apply to Canada, an officer can look at the history and say, oh, the US refused. Let's take a closer look. Well, we're probably going to refuse too. So that's typically how it plays out, but not from the standpoint of a sponsorship, unless there was something that, resulted in an actual inadmissibility, like enforcement action taking or something like that. But generally that's not the case. So yeah, Isaac, if you need any assistance, we're actually going to be dropping the spousal sponsorship course here relatively soon. Kind of like Igor's citizenship that keeps saying, we're going to do it. We're just so swamped with everything right now. So keep that in mind, but you can book a consult and we can walk you through the process, Isaac. But I think you're getting misinformation. Whoever you're relying on is not giving you accurate information. Okay,
and Isaac, absolutely make sure you disclose it. If you don't disclose it, then it will absolutely impact your application, not in a very good way.
Yeah. Okay, Vanette Sutherland says, hi, Mark and Alicia. Hi, Mark and Igor, streaming from Jamaica. I finally got a chance to catch up with. Keep up the tremendous work you guys are doing. So very informative. You're very, very welcome. Okay, Chow says, with Canada's intent to reduce the temporary residence, do you foresee any effort converting those with valid jobs and established lives to permanent residence? Yes. So that is something that, see, they're restricting all of these permits, the ability to extend work permits when you're in what they consider low wage occupations, which are under $35, effectively, give or take a few dollars, $35 an hour. Employers can't get labor market impact assessments for those positions, no matter, if there's unemployment rates of 6% or higher, then you can't, literally, you're barred from, it's a refusal to process list. But if you're in higher positions and you've got work permits that can be extended, maybe you're an intercompany transfer, someone who's come in under CUSMA, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, and you have the ability to extend that work permit. Yeah, like that is the intention, is to transition those people into permanent residence. And that's why we're not seeing federal skilled worker express entry draws, open draws. We are seeing CEC when they do happen, P&P and the category based. Yes, the category base can pull people from outside of Canada, but still, generally speaking, when you rank higher, it's because you've got Canadian work experience and things like that. All right. Kai Wolf says, praying for a blue wave on Monday. Don't know about you guys. I feel confident that polls are biased, including the mainstream media. Don't believe the polls. Canada, vote. Igor, why are you pushing that button? Okay. Here we go.
Because Alicia's not on the stream.
She's not in the stream. No, that's a thing in our firm. We all have various views on the world, and we all respect each other, and it's totally fine. So, all right. Okay. AC says, hey, Mark and Igor, is there a difference in the processing time for online and paper work permit applications, including extensions and changing conditions inside Canada? So maybe just touch on paper-based and how rare situations, but
you must apply online.
Anything about papers?
Yeah, you must apply online unless there are specific circumstances that prevent you from doing so, like your disability or for any other reason that you're unable to apply online. But it's very rare that you would apply on paper now, unless it's like a specific instruction to apply on paper, like with TRPs, right? Like you have to apply on paper. But for the work permits, like typically you would apply only online.
I'll just touch on Mikanets says, even if it was the same role. Well, if it was the same role, then I'm confused, I guess, as to your description of it being. This is the one with the same position. She said you work two different schedules, as in you work kind of day shift and then evening shift. Is that what you're referring to now, Mikanet? If it was the same role and the schedule was purely just like a different shift time, well, yeah, that's obviously the same position. You just need to describe that in the letter. So, because remember, it's all about the hours you work per week, and you have to be able to describe it. Like we use in the course and with our clients, we use letters of explanation liberally. In other words, very freely. We use them wherever possible to clarify. And when you have a unique work situation, it's really critical that you take the time to explain exactly what's going on. And the best place to do it is within the reference letter itself. After, absent the reference letter, then we have document-specific letters of explanation that we teach our clients to use and upload with their reference letters when they have tricky situations. So you need to be really, really careful with that for sure. Okay, Perseus says, hi, Mark and Igor. Is it possible to switch from a closed work permit, LMIA exempt, to an open work permit after submitting PR through EE? So maybe you can touch on that, Igor, especially the whole job offer thing and if it's tied to eligibility, those kinds of things.
Yeah, you have to be eligible for the points until the application is approved, if that's what you're asking, Mark. But theoretically, yes, like once you get the acknowledgement of receipt, you can apply for the bridge and open work permit.
I'll post something here, Igor. Thank you for answering that one. I'm going through trying to pull out all these questions. Din says, looks like Conservative Party will steal this election. What pathways do you see coming up if the Conservative Party comes to power? I don't see any substantive changes with the immigration programs other than maybe, like, I don't know, do they suspend, the Francophone draws within express entry? Do they? I don't think they do, to be honest. Ironically, when it comes to the category-based draws, what I would like them to see personally, and this is what I've advocated for, is that they shift economic immigration 75% to the provinces to make choices. That's what I would want a Conservative government to do, to say we will keep 25% for ourselves as pure express entry, CEC, FSW, straight up through us, but 75% of those within that express entry realm are going to go to the PNPs, or even divide it and say PNPs for express entry and non-express entry, but 75 of the economic, I would like to see 75% given to the provinces. They're in the best position to make decisions on what is in the best interest of our country. What's in the best interest of Ontario is not the same as Alberta. What's in the best interest of Nova Scotia is not in the best interest of, British Columbia, even though they're both on opposite coasts. And so the provinces are in the best position, and to support them and give them the ability to choose, not what the Liberal government has just done, basically gutting the PNPs by half, all for political purposes, which really irritates me. Yeah. Okay. JM says, hello, Mark and Igor. My son's study permit expires February 2026, and our work permits expire November 2026. Due to passport, how do I change this, please? Well, what you want to do, at least in my mind, is you want to submit the extensions. I would maybe even submit all of the extensions in February to extend even though yours expires in November, or alternatively, you can, if your son is accompanying, you can submit just for him an extension in February. Well, I would do it like right away in 2025. Do that extension first, and then it will only be issued theoretically until November of 2026. And so if you submit, if the study permit expires February 2026, just submit it before it expires. And then on the November side, it's going to be issued till November 2026. So then you're going to submit another one at the time in which everyone else's is extended. That's how we do it, JM. If you want to book a consult, we can talk about that further. Okay. Here's a good one, Igor, that you can answer from Great Dan. What happens if a work permit should be 3 years, but 2 years is issued due to passport expiry? Can one still extend the work permit if the passport is renewed?
All right, let me just reread the question again, because my dog was just
Your
barking.
Dog is barking. I heard that. Yes, Ocean. So just to reiterate, essentially, someone whose work permit is issued for a shorter duration because their passport was expiring. So now they've got a new passport. Can you still extend to reclaim the balance of that work permit?
So what I would say is it really depends on what exactly work permit you have. Like if it's a postgrad, yes, you can recapture the time due to the expiry of your passport. But then if it's an LMA-based work permit, then perhaps you can actually do that as well, right, Mark? We had clients who done it, but yeah, it's something that you would want to make sure you, in your specific situation, you can do. But theoretically, yes, you can.
All right. Delara says, is the procedural fairness letter means rejection or not? It means you book a consult with us, Delara. If you get a PFL, this is serious. This means they believe you don't qualify, and they're giving you one last shot to prove otherwise. It is something you do not take lightly. And in all honesty, in this world of completeness checks and one-touch policies, if you get even a request letter for more information, that is a serious thing that you need to very carefully analyze. And so we recommend, if you ever get those, that you book a consult with us to look at them. It may be that it's not a big deal and they're just asking for a follow-up of information. But in a world where they just refuse because you have information missing, if they're asking for something, often what they're trying to do is getting you to say the same thing twice. So then they can follow up. If it's just a request letter, they can follow up after with the procedural fairness letter because they feel you've misrepresented yourself not once, but twice. So you have to be very, very careful, Delara, with that. But no, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a rejection. It means it's headed that way unless you can stem it off and provide responses. And that is what we do for our clients. Okay, Elbeeb says, Mark and Igor, grateful for you guys to be doing this live stream. What would be the best options as a newly graduate registered nurse in the US? I speak English, Spanish, and learning French. Well, ultimately, it's all job driven to a large extent. And if you have job offers as a nurse in Canada, that's great. Nurses are also on the category-based draws. You need work experience. You have to have at least a year of skilled work experience. And unless you already have a year of experience as a nurse, then you're not going to be eligible for the category-based draws or even a year to get into the pool as it is. But category draws right now are the only direct pathway to PR unless you have an option through a provincial nominee program or, because the federal skilled worker program, they're not doing draws just straight up for FSW. But if you're a nurse and you have the 1 year under FSW, then the 1 year experience will allow you to qualify through the category-based draws. Okay, Nabil here says, I have CRS score 528 CEC with work permit expiring in mid-June. We are April the 23rd today. What do you think my chances are of ITA? My knock code also falls under trade category. Boy, Nabil. Igor, just a second. We've got to do it. We haven't done it yet. Let's do it. Here it is. What do you think? What's his chances with our crystal ball?
I think his chances are fairly good.
You have to rub it, Igor. You're not doing it right, man. You got to rub it. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, Nabil, I think your chances are fairly good. We haven't had a CEC draw in a while now. So the CEC draw should be coming before June, but it's important that, and you don't even have to get an invitation under a trade category. It could be just a CEC draw if you have, you have Canadian work experience. But be careful that it's not when you receive an ITA that your status is locked in. It's when you submit an EAPR and get an acknowledgement of receipt and then submit a work permit application, a bridge and open work permit application, that you can remain in Canada and continue working. So likely you will receive an ITA before June. Whether you can submit an EAPR before June and then submit a bridge and open work permits application before your status expires, that's a different question then.
Okay, a couple more. We are into long overtime here. We're going to have to shut this down, you guys. Canadian CNC Masters. Okay, hi Mark. I'm a tool and die maker on a closed work permit since 2021, 30 years old. CRS is really low. Employer supportive. I do Red Sea. Will I have any chance of an ITA? ITA is going to be tricky. It's going to be tough. Often for you guys, it's the P&P routes. And so the one advantage, if your employer can still get LMIAs, although you're losing the points for job offers for express entry, it does allow you to continue staying and working until an option through a P&P arises. But anything is possible. It is, but we just, there's no guarantees. And then of course, Omar, we don't have any responses, my friend. 3 months, he says, and no EOPER. So web forms and complain and complain and complain. That's pretty much it. The immigration programs, what has become of them? John David says, received an ITA. Can I submit my EAPR while waiting for restoration? What if my application for a visitor record is refused? John, right here. Book a consult. Let's take a look at this because you have to be careful with this. You have to. And I don't know what resulted in you getting your ITA, if there was work associated with it or things like that, but you have to be careful. Okay, and some of the people are posting that I've already answered questions from, so that's why I'm not answering your third or fourth question. I'm skipping to other people. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, okay. You know what? Oval's got some comments here that they're valid. Let's post them. Good point, Igor. Some of those remote work experiences make no sense for the employer. It's true if they're not doing any work. Then he says, scams only make things worse for thousands of persons who are following the law, and then IRCC gets blamed for everything. That is true. But I will point out, Oval, that they're responsible for enforcement. So they bloody well deserve the blame if they're not doing anything to enforce. And part of the problems with the FSW program was that they did not send officers to vet. If you've got a business that has no operations and it's all a complete sham, a simple site check can resolve that issue and realize that this is a fake. Or if the same employer has 5,000 LMIAs associated with it, that they can clue in, hey, wait a minute, maybe some of these are not legitimate offers. Or if, they said they were supposed to audit 1 in 4. And a paper audit just doesn't do anything because people can fake, and if they've sold job offers to start with, they can fake records. And when there's no punishments, man, I've told people repeatedly, if they're a Canadian citizen doing this, give them jail time, shut their business down, boom, done. If you want to wade into foreign workers and this whole world of immigration with your business and you're going to break the law, then you can go to jail and you can lose your business. And if it's a permanent resident who's come to Canada and started their own business, then strip them of their PR and send them home. That would get people's attention. Okay. He said, just like persons who move to rural communities and move out as soon as the PR card arrives in the mail, renewal of those cards should be automatically refused. I agree with that. If they just don't even, like it's all a sham, I agree with that. And then all new immigrants are not all innocent. I'm also patiently waiting in line, but abiding by the laws. I agree with you. 100%. All those comments. Those are all really good comments. Okay. Viba's in Ontario. Let's see what else here. Isaac says, thank you. Let's see what else we have here. Lots of people are asking why it's taking so long. Things are just a mess. Yeah. This is a good question, Harmon. This is a question from X. Why isn't Canada acting to stop unauthorized reps in immigration applications? Big ed techs operate right inside Canada and marketing openly. That's a very good question, my friend. And this is on the government. And when it comes to anyone who's holding themselves out as an immigration consultant, then it's up to the Immigration Consultant Association to go after them. Just don't know to what extent they are. Let's see here. So what else? God. Let's go. Let's see here. And people like this, SD, if there is an urgent question that you absolutely have to have answered, then book a consultation. That's the best way to do it. JM says, much appreciated. And if we don't answer questions, sometimes we don't, it's not something that would benefit the large part of the group, or it's something that we don't have an answer for. So it doesn't do any good to pull a question up and say, well, we don't know. We'd have to do some research. Yeah, here's another one. Chow says, do you guys have any insight why LMIA processing is so long? Simple. They're now starting to vet. So they've got all these massive numbers of LMIA applications for people who are trying to stay. And now they're actually taking their time and vetting the employers to make sure that the jobs are legitimate. So it's like a year now. Crazy. LMIA is a year processing. Okay, this one, Canadian CNC Masters, right here, book a consult. Book a consult. If you have a child that it has autism, book a consult. We can talk about it. Let's see what else here. Just about to the end. Yeah, GTS, Rob. No, I didn't miss your question. I just didn't answer it because we don't file a lot of GTS applications. So we don't have really anything to report on that front. My colleagues, there was a time 80% of my practice was that kind of work, big global firms. But I chose not to join them when they all started amalgamating. So I don't do as many GTS applications. And 15 business days, my friend. Oh my goodness. At 200 plus for, or a year for an LMIA under the regular stream, absolutely GTS is going to be impacted. So 15 days, not surprised it's there. Let's see what else. And just a final, we'll wrap it up here with VK. What's your take on P&P draws? They don't seem to be happening this year. Reduced allotment? Yes. Most ITAs already issued in 2024 and 2025 quota? Yes. And it'll be tough to accommodate all 8 streams. Well, the reality is they just have fewer numbers, and that's what's driving, and they have to make decisions. Okay. We'll just end right there. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate all of the questions. That's what makes this all possible. Like we talked about before, all of this is sponsored by the Canadian Immigration Institute. And the 2 courses that we have, the 2 flagship courses, are Express Entry and the TRV course. Definitely go check those out. Once you subscribe to this, you get access to life for life, guys. So if you're just at the beginning stages or at the very end, it doesn't matter. You're going to get full access and the ability to access all upgrades to the courses as well. And I have a masterclass that's associated with Express Entry. In fact, I have one tonight at 4 p.m. that I'm going to be doing. You can come in and get your questions answered in more of a webinar format where you can actually come on and I pull you right on and you can ask your question, or you can post in the comments, or we have a community group where you can leave your questions. This is by far the best value out there for assistance with Express Entry. Okay. Thanks so much, Igor. I guess we'll flip on our fancy little song here again. All right, guys, take care. Thanks so much and good luck. Keep your spirits high.
Snowy peak